As we've been exploring so far, this kind of gentle, non-reactive response can lead to new possibilities for our lives that arise precisely because we're not getting carried away by the pain or in the pain.
So no longer are you being enslaved by what's difficult. Your mind, your brain reacting with a sense of aversion, a sense of, I need to get away from this. Now you're saying, well, actually, let me look at this for a moment.
To be with, to actually see it for what it is, and then to make a choice about how one is going to work with it, that you don't have when you're ensnared in that trying to get away.
To say, I shouldn't be depressed right now, is a pushing away of the fact that the individual is depressed right now. And the shoulds are the opposite of is. So to recognize, oh, there's a depressed mood there, and it's going to affect me physically. My appetite may change, my sleep may change. It's going to affect me emotionally with sadness or irritability. It's going to affect me cognitively. Thinking shifts in depression. Oh yeah, there's all that negative thinking again. The negativity about the self and the world and the future. It's all just a big kind of global negative. But they're still just thoughts. Yep, this is what's happening right now. There's a lot of negative thoughts going on. Now what would I like to do today?
So there's this way of, like I said, having our feelings, meeting them, acknowledging that they're there, not pushing them away, not making them bigger than they are, but just knowing that they're there, meeting them with kindness, and then choosing.
Notice that when we stop and watch, we're not simply succumbing or giving in to whatever our thoughts and emotions are doing. We're more like an observer on the banks of a river, watching the current go by. As we get better and better at not getting pulled into the current, we develop more and more patience and compassion for what's coming up, even if it's really challenging to look at.
When you're depressed, you feel, bound up, straitjacketed, without options, sort of poured in cement maybe even. And even the slightest possibility that there's some other way of relating to this, that you can feel a little wiggle of movement, is hope. And you can build on that. When we can bring close attention to things, we start to see that there are options, that there's wiggle room, that there's a little bit of movement where we thought there was none. Paying attention, even when something feels really uncomfortable and difficult, can open up options that you've never seen before.
The 13th century Sufi poet Rumi said, don't look away from the bandaged place, that's where the light enters.
It's in that darkness, really, where we grow. Rollo May said, one does not become fully human painlessly. By allowing ourselves to go into the darkness, to experience the dark emotions, we not only learn to tolerate our dark emotions, but we learn to grow and transcend our place in the world. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said, those are the people who have experienced loss, the people who have experienced trauma, the people who have experienced suffering. Those are the most beautiful people in the world. She says, beautiful people don't just happen.
I just stopped and I just sat still, kind of like I'm doing right now. And I just closed my eyes, and I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I think the focus was on not taking it in, not taking more stuff in, not seeking more stimulation, but to just really be in my own experience. And when I did that, I was stunned at how immediately I was able to see into something that felt much more primary to me than my feelings, than my thoughts, than my beliefs, than my experience, than my memory. It was this essence that I felt that I was really contacting and steeping in. It was this awareness beneath the din of thought and feeling. On one pole, there was total disaster. There was total chaos. I was as broken and beat up as I felt emotionally, mentally. Things were a wreck. And yet, simultaneously, in that same moment, I observed this deep stillness, this profound calm, this restful quality of just being okay and being sustained and supported in the moment.
Ultimately, as reflected in these experiences, there are times when pain, especially handled carefully and skillfully, can offer meaningful lessons and move us in a direction of deeper healing.
Everyone's experience is going to vary, and I can't tell you what you would necessarily experience, but I do know that as you engage in the practice and notice what comes up and watch everything, including depression and depressing thoughts and sadness and sensations in the body that are uncomfortable associated with depression, that as you view them in the light of awareness, they change. There's flexibility, there's movement, and the relationship begins to shift. This is not an overnight thing. Often years leading up to that depression that has sort of hardened that position. But if there can be a little movement, then you can work with it.
Often when we meet those thoughts and feelings with kindness and compassion, they do kind of diminish in their intensity or their forcefulness or their demand to be acted upon.
This power of coming to the present moment, to just accept what is without feeding it and making it larger, right? And just resting with that, and helps to give us slowly, it's a practice, but this access to everything else that is beyond the illness, beyond the chronic pain, beyond the depression.
This narrative around mental illness in our culture has everything to do with what we lack. And we're very interested in pointing people back in an intuitive way to what's inherently whole in themselves. Once they can connect with that wholeness and that sense of being okay just as things are, even when things are a mess, especially when things are a mess, to just acknowledge that they're still breathing and they're still alive and there's so much potential. Every moment is full of this. It's just brimming with potential to move in a new direction. We want to open them up to that moment of intuition and awareness where they can move in a direction that they might not have explored, that they might not have thought to explore.
Most refreshing, then, is the idea that we can be in pain emotionally, mentally, or physically without being entirely consumed and overwhelmed and driven and defined by that pain. In this space, we may begin to spot hints of health and healing starting to come up.
How one deals with the effects of those illnesses can really alter the course of the illness. And if we can teach people to be with the discomfort in a certain way, it lessens the likelihood of blowing up into a full-fledged incident.
I had kidney stones when I first came to California. Quite an experience and very painful, as you can imagine. And then what happened after I got over that, whenever I have kind of twinges, I think, oh my gosh, I'm going to get kidney stones. You know, when people have had depression and then they have a thought or a body sensation that they think, oh my gosh, I'm going to go back into that depth of despair again. I just know it. They're absolutely fine one day, but then maybe just a little something, body sensation, that just has this cascade of thoughts that come with it. Oh my gosh, you know, this is going to happen. This is going to be awful. You know, I'm going to end up in the hospital. Or depression, I'm going to have a relapse. I'm going to curl up in my bed, you know, and put the covers over my head. I can't cope. That has this almost this pathway that's been so set, you know, like people walking over the grass to a parked car, you know, they do it every day, so you've got this kind of neuronal pathway that's been set.
We do have those well-worn grooves that we slip into, that we sort of see everything in the same way for a while, and nothing. There are no possibilities when you're in the groove, in the well-worn ruts of the road.
Like Steve just said, some habits for reacting to pain have been so overused for so long that the brain has grown accustomed to them. Remember though, if the brain can change in one direction, it can change in another. Interestingly enough, it may not take something dramatic to get this process started. The message here is that something as simple as just stopping can ironically spark some positive movement in our life and our brain.
When we step into the present moment, we're fully here with what is, and we're not trying to make what is into something else. There's this sense of compassionate awareness, of acceptance, or at least, if not acceptance, acknowledgement, full acknowledgement of what's going on. You know, here I am, I feel completely bummed out. Can I just fully acknowledge that? Can I not try to do anything about it right now? Can I just feel into that a little bit?
To bring a certain degree of kindness and compassion and patience to our own experience, and to let go of judging an experience as bad or good, but allowing the experience to be what it is without the judgment.
Acceptance is not passivity. It's not a resignation. Acceptance leads to wanting to make changes in the present, compassionate choices in the present, so as to maximize the possibility of the future emerging the way you would like it to be.
In this space of awareness, what do I need to do that's going to be helpful for me right now? Maybe I need to take care of myself in this moment because I'm feeling so uncomfortable right now. Maybe I need to take a walk with my dog. Maybe I need to go take a bath. Maybe I need to just go lie down. Maybe I need to call a friend. These are all actions that happen when you pop into that space of awareness and make a choice. All of a sudden, you're an active participant in your own health and well-being. You're no longer enslaved to what your mind is telling you.
You know, our day, every day, is literally packed with choice points. Points where we can choose left or right, chocolate or vanilla, this person, that person, say yes, say no, turn off here, don't turn off. Most of those choice points we miss because we're on autopilot. And most of the time that's okay. But then sometimes when we start to tell ourselves there are no options, we have no choices, we forget that there were all of these options and choices that were before us that we just missed because we just went on autopilot. So when we stop and pay attention, suddenly the whole world opens up. There's all kinds of options and alternatives of dealing with any particular thing when we can see things as they are rather than how our brain tells us they are.
So let's review for a minute. As simple as it sounds, being more present to our current experience can open up a new sense of possibility and freedom.
Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor and he was a neurologist and a psychiatrist, had this wonderful quote that's been attributed to him that says, "In between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom." So our work is to let people know that that space of awareness in between the stimulus and response is a choice point. So sometimes I let people know, be on the lookout for these choice points, these moments of awareness that you have throughout the day.
We do have those well-worn grooves that we slip into, that we sort of see everything in the same way for a while, and there are no possibilities when you're in the groove, in the well-worn ruts of the road. But if you can bring yourself up, if you notice that they're there and bring yourself up out of them, even for a little while, then you see there's possibility.
And so it's been able to move and not kind of always have that as a default. In the end, being able to actually say, oh, and this too. That it doesn't have to be that, but this, going down that same road of depressive symptoms, so you don't have to go down that path. You don't have to go down that road anymore. There's this other possibility. Okay, maybe I'll try that path.
This kind of awareness exercise isn't some new fad in psychology. People have been benefiting from practices like the one we're describing for hundreds and hundreds of years. And as we've said, it doesn't need to take a lifetime to see the benefits either. I was really heartened at the fact that it didn't take a lifetime of training on the misty mountaintops of China to see this stuff. It was just a simple sitting down in a chair like the one I'm sitting in and just being willing to look at what was going on. And I realized that aside from all the problems, aside from all the agitation, or maybe you could even say beneath all the problems and the agitation, there was this sense that I was just aware. I was just aware of awareness. I was aware that I was aware. And there was something so calming about that to me. There was something so pristine about it. It was prior to any problem that I could ever experience. And even though I got pulled back into problems 1,000 more times, 1,000,000 more times, I knew that beneath that din, beneath that activity of problems coming up in my life, that there was just something in awareness holding it.
The more we stop, the more we come to find ourselves with an ability to accept whatever we're facing at the time, a deep okayness, regardless of circumstance.
And I'm not suggesting here this kind of rosy view of reality where we just, buck up and have an optimistic view. It's not about optimism. It's about realism. It's about really training awareness to look at all of life, everything that's happening moment to moment. And you'll be surprised, whereas you've been focusing on this mess, all the things going wrong, you'll actually see that outside of that wrongness, outside of that area that's arising as a problem, you realize all the things that are going right. And you realize that that represents the totality of your experience. When I think about positive thinking and this new age movement of manifestation, just think about what you want, imagine it, see it in your mind's eye, and it will manifest. I don't criticize that point of view, although I don't particularly identify with it. What I'm talking about is a kind of courage and a kind of sincerity where you look at your life and you're willing to just see what's there. And you realize in doing so that where you were really losing your energy, what was really causing your suffering that you didn't realize was causing you to suffer, was all the energy you were spending on avoiding, all the energy you were spending on resisting. When you stop resisting, when you stop avoiding and you open your closet and look at that boogeyman, you realize, the boogeyman was actually my avoiding the boogeyman. It was being terrified to look under the bed or in the closet, and you look at it and you realize that you're equal to that task. You can look at it and it won't destroy you. And it's the willingness to just hold your life, all of your life, in awareness that empowers you to take account and start moving in a direction that feels right.
When we practice this kind of grounding in calm awareness, we also start to realize how much energy we were previously wasting on avoiding and resisting the things we don't like.
Part of the human experience is experiencing the full range of human potential, both in what we would call the negative emotions and what we would call the positive emotion. The struggle with it is what causes us suffering. It's when we struggle with it. It's when we push away from it. It's when we when we can't tolerate it. It's kind of like, I'm a surfer. So what they teach you when you first learn to surf is if you get sucked in by a riptide, that you have to relax into it. If you don't relax into it, you're going to drown because you can't struggle against it. It will take you under and you will drown. So you relax into it and you go with it. And it carries you, the riptide will carry you a mile down the shore and it will spit you out and you'll swim to a different shore, but you've made it. And it's a little like that with our suffering. Struggling with the suffering merely prolongs it.
As we learn to stop resisting so much, we may find ourselves having much more energy to meet the challenges of life more effectively.